This episode of the BJJ Foxcast is brought to you by BioPro. BioPro is an all-natural alternative to prescription human growth hormone, which aids in recovery, anti-aging, metabolism, libido, immunity, skin health, cognition, sleep, and stress. Just one vial per day provides a substantial boost to all of these growth factors. Okay, so that's what they want me to say. Here's what I know as an aging grappler. I've been using BioPro Plus and the nighttime variant, BioPro Plus Cortisleep, for several months, and it feels like I've grown a third lung. My gas tank is noticeably bigger, my recovery is faster, and I'm back on the mats much quicker, not just between training sessions, but between rounds. Now you can get $30 off your first order of BioPro when you use the code Foxcast at www.bioproteintech.com. That's code Foxcast for $30 off your first order at www.bioproteintech.com. Thank you, BioPro. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the BJJ Foxcast. I am your host, Alex Martinez, and today I have my good friend Riley Rogers on the show. He's a brown belt under Pedro Sauer. Let's say Keith Owen, and we'll talk about that here shortly. And he's the owner of SALT Electrolytes, and he trains at Team Rhino. It's a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Academy in Meridian, Idaho. Riley, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad we could make this happen, man. And we were supposed to do this in February.
Yeah. Sometimes stuff doesn't work out, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I want to get right into the SALT Electrolytes. And you sent me a pack. It was like an 8-pack of different flavors. And sure. I think my feedback to you was it tastes like stuff that I get in Mexico, which I love. The flavors in Mexico, like remember that?
Was it either reference the candy? There was a type of a candy that
not the specific candy, but the flavors. And you told me I was like the second person to tell you that.
Yeah, and I've had about 5 more since.
Yeah, man. I wish if you're ever like in a position where you could take like a mini vacation, I'd love to show you around Rocky Point, Mexico. It's Puerto Penasco, and I'm telling you the flavors. You'll be like, yeah, this is it. I don't know how we got there, but we got there.
Well, that's funny because I have no reference point at all. It just is a happy mistake, I guess.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So tell me about, let's talk a little bit about jiu-jitsu, where it started, and then we'll kind of talk about how you got into the electrolyte. I mean, to me, it's obvious, right? How you got into that type of business, but let's start from the beginning.
Yeah, you've been playing that game for a while, haven't you?
Yeah, man. Yeah. How did you find jiu-jitsu?
So jiu-jitsu was I had a friend from church that invited me to go. He called it some self-defense stuff, and yeah. I didn't realize that he was a jiu-jitsu guy, and I had never, other than Hoist Gracie in the first UFCs, I really hadn't any experience with it at all. I was 100% convinced because I'm 6 foot tall, 200 pounds, and a little more than that now, but at the time, that's about where I was rolling.
Yeah.
I thought I could take care of myself, man. And I told him one day we were on a run, and I said, yeah, I'm big enough and strong enough. I can hold my own with anybody. Yeah, I didn't realize that I would be treated like a 6-year-old and had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
And was so out of class. And I just, to me, it felt like a superpower. And I decided after the first 5 minutes, that's what I wanted to learn it.
Yeah.
So that was...
I love it.
Where it started. Yeah.
That's a pretty common story for bigger guys, and for you to overcome that shot to the ego and stick with it, that says a lot about you. Because I've got a 125-pound purple belt female that I feed big guys to, like the new guys that are just a little bit full of themselves, and yeah, she tunes them up, and they may or may not come back. So good for you, man.
No, that's I see it all the time now, right? Where guys will come in and we've got a young kid that's 16 years old, maybe he just turned 17, about 145 pounds. That we do the same thing. He just got his blue belt because he just turned 16, right?
Yeah.
But he's been training since he was 7, and they don't know that part. And he just murders them, and it's the same thing. It's kind of that test of the ego, and if they're okay with that, they'll stick around. But often they don't.
Yeah. The first time I was exposed to that, there was a friend of mine who, at white belt, he was submitting like purple belts. Like he was just super duper athletic, and it wasn't anything crazy. Like he wasn't doing cartwheels to pass guard. He would just pull you into the closed guard, and he had a vice grip on your collar, and you were either going to get armbarred or triangled because his legs were so strong, and he would hit that a lot, you know? Yeah. And he went to this tournament where you qualified for the Abu Dhabi trials. It was all in the gi, and he qualified, right? He, as a blue belt, he qualified, and we were like, oh, this is going to be awesome. When he came back, he was defeated. Like he came back and he was like, I got beat by this kid. Like he was maybe 16, 17 years old. And he goes, I couldn't do anything. And that's when I realized there were the 7-year-olds that went through the kids program, you know, it did and the kid that beat him had done 2 years at blue belt juvenile. And he was in his second year at adult blue. You know what I mean? So he was like,
so he's been grappling for black belt length of time.
Yes. Yeah.
But still running around with the blue belt on. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And now that you hear that, you're like, and it's more common now, but you know, 10, 11 years ago, you're like, holy crap, man, that's so unfair. But it's not because the kids dedicated themselves. Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah, man. So
that's how it works.
Yeah. So that's really cool. So you walked into jiu-jitsu school, you got tuned up a little bit. What brought you back?
Well, I got tuned up a lot. It wasn't a little bit. I happened to, so this is a funny story, but there was a blue belt there who had been, he's one of those guys that's just a blue belt for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I remembered seeing on the UFC a straight ankle lock. I had no idea what I was doing. So he came up and kind of laid on his back and put his foot up there, and I just grabbed it and ripped on it. In hindsight, I had no clue what I was doing, but I happened to catch him.
Yeah, yeah.
And so he tapped out and then proceeded to just pay me back for my sins there. I could turn my neck the right way for about 2 weeks. And
yeah.
It was I got tuned up a lot that day. So it was memorable, we'll say that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And there's a lot of stories like that, right? Like you do something and then they give you this look like, okay, this is happening now. So yeah, it makes for a long round. Yeah, man.
Yeah, you done messed up. That's what.
Yeah. So have you spent your entire time at the same academy?
No. So when I first started with these guys from church, it was that was kind of what it was. We would get together in one of the guys' garage or the living room or just kind of the Gracie garage experience. Yeah. So we'd study the Gracie combatives material a little bit, but the other two guys really didn't like to drill, and so we just go, hey, I saw this move, and now let's kill each other. Yeah. And and that resulted in, I said I caught that first submission that first day. It was 6 months before I got another one.
Yeah.
It was, and the story there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I got beat up a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then it was after about 2.5 years of kind of piddling around with that. We get together once every other week or so. After about 2.5 years of that, I decided I wanted actual instruction. Mm-hmm. And so I went over, the gym I'm training at now, I knew of them just from the reputation. Keith Owen was a fairly well-known dude, pretty high-level instructor. And so I wanted that. And I felt like within the first 2 weeks being there that I learned more than I did in the 2.5 years at the Gracie Garage situation. So,
yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about, people that actually, study the instruction. Not that you didn't, but I mean, you didn't know the nuance, right? Of the
nuance is a huge deal.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. Yeah. There's certain things like, we did a semi-private with, who Isaac Doderlin is?
I don't know that name.
So Isaac is one of 6 Americans that has won the world championships, the Jiu-Jitsu World Championships. So he's a really cool dude. He's originally out of Arizona. He moved from Arizona. He moved his whole family to go train with Cabrina in California to win a world championship. And I think like 8 years later, he got it done. You know what I mean? So that says a lot about him. He's very dedicated, super nice guy. Like I said, he has got his family here. So whenever he's in town and, he puts on a seminar or whatever, I jump at the opportunity. But he has a really good relationship with my instructor. So he had this like semi-private for the black belts. And let me tell you something, with that 1 hour was like Oh my gosh. Well, you know how it is. Like someone shows you something and it becomes like obvious after they show it to you. Like, you know, those types of things.
And the whole room gasps when they see it. It's like, you gotta be kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, speaking of the straight ankle lock, he's like, I don't attack the ankle. I attack the foot. And he was showing us how he attacks the foot. And then he says, there's this little thing that I do at the very end to really cinch it. And it was just a deep breath. He would lock it in and he would fill his lungs, and it just got so tight. The foot just felt like it was
your foot's going to come off the end of your leg. Doesn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, those types of things are like, oh my gosh, like, wow, this is so cool, you know? And, but yeah, so, you know, not only are there levels in competition, there's also levels of instruction, right? Like I give myself a B plus, maybe a B, you know, he is at that next level of instruction.
Now, instruction's like learning a completely new art.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. We talked about my instructor, Keith Owen, and him passing away a couple of years ago. Maybe we can segue into that a little bit.
Absolutely.
I was middle purple belt at the time that I started. He had been asking me once in a while if I could cover a class here and there. And man, I was dead set that I did not want to mix any type of work with my hobby. And so I just told him no for a while. And then one day he was going to be out of town on vacation, and he asked me to just cover a couple daytime classes since I was going to be there. And I said, oh, sure, I'll cover. And, you know, I just taught the curriculum of the day and went over it with the students. And then, you know, he was gone for a week and came back, and we did that a few times where I would just cover a couple of classes here and there. And it happened to be on his vacation to Brazil, where he passed away, that I was taking over his classes.
Whoa.
And man, he just didn't come home. And so to this day, 2 years later, I'm still doing those classes.
Wow.
And they're kind of special to me because of that, right? It's, oh man, it wasn't something I ever planned on doing, but, you know, back to it being an art form, learning how to teach is extremely challenging.
It is.
Very rewarding, and I think it's done more for my jiu-jitsu than I would have gotten had I not began to instruct, right?
Yeah.
It's when those guys ask the questions that I don't know how to answer, and I have to go find the answer.
Yeah. And that's weird for people to accept, right? Like, what do you mean you don't know? There's so many things. I think the more, especially as an instructor, the more you immerse yourself in the technique, the more you realize how little you know. No,
it seems it's like chewing a tough piece of meat, right?
Yeah.
The more you learn, the bigger it gets. It's just like the more you chew, the bigger it gets. I feel like the closer I get to black belt, the more I realize I don't know. And it starts to build that imposter syndrome, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, well, if I don't know this much, I'm constantly seeing stuff I've never seen before.
Yeah.
Guys will show me details on something that I'm just, you know, it's blowing my mind.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I thought black belts knew everything. Turns out they don't.
Yeah. You know, I think what it allows you to do at that level is it gives you the time to process more information. So when people ask you a question, like, a lot of the questions that I get are like, well, what if, right? And I was like, sure. well, the answer is you don't get tunnel vision, right? I mean, there's technique, you don't get tunnel vision. So if you're working a technique and they, you know, they force you into a transition, then you just transition into something else, you know? But understanding the position, right? Understanding the end result, which is either a sweep or a submission or whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. The magic is right in the middle, right? And if you could have 10 different people teaching you the same exact technique 10 different ways because of that transition in the middle. That's what I love the most about it.
We did the instructor training course for Pedro Sauer's association. And one of the events that we did in there was we had a group of guys, and there was 5 or 6 of us in the group, and each one of us had to teach the scissor sweep. You know, and there was not even a similar story in all 6 of us, you know.
Yeah.
They were very different methodologies and very different focal points. And, you know, one guy's focusing on the knee, one guy's focusing on the sweeping leg, one guy's focusing on how to twist the hips. And it's just it was 6 different ways of doing the same move.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I totally identify with what you're saying.
Yeah. And that's what I love. Like, you know, a lot of one big question that new people have, especially when they're doing the fundamentals course, is like, well, why is it that different people teach it different ways? Or, you know, that's not how this person taught it. That's not, and I have to explain to them, like, the fundamentals are at the beginning and the end. The magic is in the middle, right?
In the middle. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
no, I get that question probably more than anything, you know?
Yeah.
Well, the morning guy didn't say that.
Yeah. well, he's wrong,
yeah,
damn
man.
it.
Yeah. That's how I usually respond. I just say that's what's known as the wrong way. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, that's funny, man.
No, I'm kidding.
So tell me about your relationship with Keith. How did you guys meet?
We met the day I walked into his school. Yeah, it was, Keith was just, talk about instruction being an art form, man. You know, he learned from Pedro Sauer. I'm not sure if you've ever watched or have any relation to Pedro, but Pedro's a magician. He's one of those guys that, you know, there'll be 40 black belts in a room and somebody will ask a question and he'll show this smallest little detail and the whole room just lets out the collective. Yeah. Oh, you gotta be kidding. That's all there was to that, you know?
Yeah.
Well, Keith was right along those same lines. It was just like that every day. It was,
wow.
There was some nugget I was pulling out of there every day, you know, that was just amazing. And the guy was, gosh, I don't know how to describe him. He could just command a room. And he was always that dude who, you know, I know that nobody knows everything, but it sure seemed like he did, you know. And a lot of it is principle. You know, he knew the principles behind what was going on, so he could watch what you're trying to do and fix it for you.
That's cool.
But yeah, just a great dude, man. I really breaks my heart that he's not around anymore. You know, we're keeping the school alive, and we've kind of tried to fill in the gaps, but you know, you just can't fill those shoes.
Yeah. Did he have any partnerships at that school that are keeping the business side alive, or how's that working?
Yeah, his wife does all the administration. She still does.
Oh, good. Okay.
She's a magician in that department. She does a good job. Yeah. She knows how to run a school. And then 2 of his second degree black belts under him are the head instructors now.
Cool.
So they kind of share that role.
That's good, man. That's good that he had good people around him to hold up that end. But I hate to ask this question, but how did he pass away? What happened?
You know, it's not totally known. Because it was in Brazil, there was some stuff that happened that prevented. They wanted to do an autopsy, but they weren't able to. Something to do with the instructions for the embalming. It was supposed to be like a partial, but they ended up doing a full because they just didn't get the memo, I guess.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, the town that his body was in, it flooded, and so there was a time gap there that the full embalming would have had to happen anyways. And so,
I see.
It was kind of a mess trying to get him back. And so the suspicion was it was a heart attack, but we're not totally sure.
Gotcha. Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's rough, man. I'm sorry to hear that. I feel for you guys because, I actually had a friend, at, the Soul Fighters HQ, which is in Tempe, probably about 5-6 miles from me. And, that's where Tanquinho has a school, and, giant school, man, beautiful place. And one of the black belts there is, he literally had a heart attack on the mat while he was teaching. And luckily there was a doctor that had the equipment required, the AED, and saved his life. John Lightfoot's alive because there was an AED in the room. And, I ordered one shortly after that.
Yeah, we have one in our school, and I'd love to say I know how to use it, but probably should do some research on that.
Yeah, it's actually pretty simple.
Real, man. I know another guy who had a heart attack on the mat. You know, that's a scary deal.
If you open up the AED, the case that it's in, there should be this thing that folds out like a poster, and it shows the torso, and it shows where to put them. So if you're like scrambling and you're panicking, just look at the picture and follow the picture. It's actually pretty simple.
Okay.
The only thing
I might go in and look at that beforehand, because it's something that's kind of been sitting there for years, and I've never bothered to look in it. But
Yeah.
I think you just spurred me on. I think I'm going to go spend some time in there.
You definitely do. And if you get a chance, you can actually order, practice pads. So you can practice actually putting them on, somebody and plugging it in. It won't hurt them. There's also pediatric pads. I mean, you can use the adult pads for on kids, but when they get really little, you got to put one on the chest and one on the back. And then that's for adults, it's like, on the chest and on the side. For pediatrics, it's like front and back. So you definitely want to get those pediatric ones and have them handy as well, because you just never know,
we've got like 150 kids in our school. So
oh gosh, yeah.
It's definitely.
Yeah, and and I'm sure there's some, there's a guy that's a firefighter or something that can, school your folks on how to use them. But I think everybody should use it. I mean, med kit, everybody has a med kit, but the AED is what's going to save somebody's life, I believe. So
yeah, in that situation for sure.
Yeah.
We've got a whole bunch of the first responder guys in our school, so
cool.
that'd be.
I'm sure they'd be eager to help, man. Yeah,
for sure.
Sorry, I'm really sorry to hear that, man. That's rough. That's rough. And
I tell you, it's you realize pretty quick after something like that how important your instructor is to your everyday life.
Yeah.
Just how much they mean to you, and it's something to not take for granted, I tell you.
Yeah.
Having that guy there for the 5 years that I knew him was amazing, and what I'd give to have that back, is a
man.
Tough one.
I had a really good friend of mine, Mark Stoltman, passed away at 44. Super athlete. He wasn't a jiu-jitsu guy, but it's about 7 years ago now. It just had a massive heart attack in his sleep, and he we really couldn't find out if it ran in his family. He was adopted, and like one of the abandoned adopted, so no sign of the original, the biologicals. But he was such a special guy, man. He was one of the smartest men I've ever met, and he was so he went to chiropractor school and did that for a while, and then decided not for him. Went back to school, became a toxicologist, working in a lab.
Oh man!
And that's how he met his wife. And then he decided he can make more money being a professional witness fighting the lab results. So that's what he did. He literally he spent his days in shorts and a t-shirt, and then when he had to go to court, he'd put on a suit and go to court. That was his deal. But if you told him like, hey, I drank a 7-Up and I had some aspirin, he'd be like, oh, okay, listen, your knees are going to do this. And he was that guy, he could tell you like how your body reacts to different chemicals. And I'm just a brilliant guy. And just my relationship with time just changed. It just changed after he passed away, because at 44 years old, super athlete, I just couldn't believe he's gone. And now, unfortunately for people around me, if anybody wastes my time, I get really angry.
Yeah. But because you start to realize it's finite, man.
It is, man.
For sure.
It is. And every day with somebody that you respect and love is a gift, man. It really is.
Yeah. It makes those little issues you have with somebody seem small.
Yeah.
Seem trivial. Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys are carrying on. You have, the business side's taken care of. The instruction side, obviously, with you and the team is taken care of. How did the team react? Like overall, was everybody just in shock, or did everybody say, hey, let's rally? How did that work out?
It was both of those things, because we were right in the middle of a school transition too, moving locations.
Mm-hmm.
Watching his family, what that did to them. We didn't know if the school was going to continue, but they decided to continue on. So we moved to the new location. This is all happening as we're mourning, right?
Yeah.
And as the family, man, they were strong through that. I couldn't believe it. But so we're transitioning not only locations, but we're mourning the loss of Keith. And then we're going through this construction process and all the delays, that happen with that. But yeah, we were able to, just as a team, just kind of buckle down and go, you know what, if the family's going to carry forward this vision, then let's do this. And we've got the resources, so let's all pitch in. And that was what it was. It was all hands on deck.
That's
we've
awesome.
got I think 6 or 7 of the black belts that are there, and they're all helping with instruction. Every one of us is involved in some way.
Yeah.
And then there's 4 of us brown belts, or 5 of us brown belts that are all pitching in too. So we between that bunch of people, we've got pretty good instruction going on there, and we all carried on from Keith's legacy, and I'll kind of know his way of instructing, his way of teaching, and tried our best. It's
yeah,
it's still a brown belt trying to teach class, but
well,
I guess when you're a white belt, brown belts know a lot, right?
Let me tell you something. When you're a white belt, just walking in, a lot of people could show you stuff. So, but I think that's a great tribute to Keith, man. And keep up the good work, man. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah, we got a great place down there.
Yeah,
man, we miss him though. Sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. How big is a new spot? Is it how many square feet is it?
It's 3,800 square feet of mat.
Ooh, nice.
It's a big place, man. It's about 3.5 times the size of what we came from.
Yeah.
We get laughing all the time because we've got all these square feet to grapple on, but it seems like everybody always ends up in one spot anyways.
Of course.
You still have to jump in there and keep people from rolling on top of each other.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I'm really big on, man. I tell my instructors, like, okay, I know everybody wants to roll, but somebody's got to make sure they don't kill each other. You know what I mean?
Well, you've probably taken the heel in the face from some other couple of dudes that are rolling in the past. I've eaten a few of those, and they don't always turn out pretty.
Yeah, I have my little safety brief before we start rolling. Sometimes I have to remind everybody, like, hey, if you're wrestling, you're responsible for everybody on the ground. Not the other way around. If you land on somebody, that's on you, that type of thing. So, I make sure that we point that out. But 3,800 square feet of mat space, you can fit a lot of people on there, man. That's cool.
Oh, you can fit a lot, yeah. We've had 130 people at one time on there, and it gets pretty crowded at that.
Sure, yeah.
When I say 3,800, there's about 800 of that is a separate room.
Okay.
So there's about 3,000 in the main area. Yeah,
that's almost double what I have.
Yeah, it's big.
Yeah,
it's in it when you're standing in it, especially when I'm there before class by myself. It's cavernous. It's big.
Yeah, that's cool. And do you guys have any striking classes, or are you just traditional jiu-jitsu?
No, we do. Yeah, we have Saturdays. We'll do some special striking classes, and then we interweave it within the actual instruction time too.
Okay.
We do a lot of, we'll strap the gloves on and fight each other, and it's all pulled punches, how it goes. We're not in there trying to pound each other.
Yeah.
Most of us are middle-aged dudes with families that have to go back to work, So.
Yeah, man.
But you've got to learn how to deal with that stuff, man.
Absolutely.
If you don't know how to stop a punch or how to avoid a punch, you're just kidding yourself. So.
Yeah. If you can't slip a punch, you're going to eat it. So you don't want to eat it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. What do you do for a living? What do you do full-time job?
So I have another business besides SALT, where I own a couple small fleet of trucks that is a mobile oil change service.
Oh, nice, man.
So that's where my paycheck comes from.
Right
while
on.
I grow salt. Sure.
Yeah. So have you always worked on cars? Is that your thing?
No, I came from construction. So back in the day, 15 years ago, I worked in the window and siding remodel kind of trade, and we always struggled to get our trucks, into the service shop to get their oil changed and that sort of thing done. So when I closed the siding and window company back in 2009, I started this mobile oil change because I figured I wasn't the only guy in the world with that problem.
Yeah.
So turns out I'm not. That's a great business.
Yeah, that's cool. So is it like, do you do like, do you service like fleets of trucks? Do you service anybody or how does that work out?
Yeah, commercial fleets is what we service there. So
okay.
That's where all our marketing dollars go, and that's what we focus on. We do the occasional personal vehicle, but we focus almost solely on the fleets.
Yeah, that's smart. So you're from the construction trade, you're going into the mobile oil change business, and how in the world does SALT come about? You just didn't have enough to do, right?
Journey around
you just didn't have enough to do, so why not?
Yeah, well, so part of it that actually was true, because I've spent a lot of years building the mobile oil change business, and it does not require much of my time.
Okay.
So most of that's delegated out, and so I did kind of have some free time, and I was spending a lot of that. I do 350 to 400 jiu-jitsu classes a year, and so I'm training quite a lot. But man, during the days, I'm kind of sitting around going, I got more time, man.
Yeah.
So that was truthfully part of the reason I started SALT was to have a project, but it came from a need, and prior to jiu-jitsu, my sport of choice was distance running and triathlon.
I did that too.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. That's crazy.
I plan on getting back to it one day.
Really? Okay.
I want to hit that black belt first, and that's kind of my main focus right now. But once that happens, I'd like to start adding that back in. I really enjoy that as a sport.
Very cool.
But within that, I was on a long run one day, a couple weeks before a half marathon event, and I was doing about a 12.5 mile training run. And this was in late May, early June. It was about 85 degrees out that day. And as I'm running, I had this point where I could refill my water. It was kind of the turnaround point, and there was supposed to be a water source. Well, I got down there and I drank my water bottle dry, and the water source was not on. So
no.
The fountain I was supposed to have access to was dry, which meant 4.5 miles back to where the next water source was.
Yeah.
But I'd been dry for a mile and a half.
Yeah.
And so I'm running along and I'm feeling okay, but all of a sudden I realize I'm not sweating anymore.
Yep.
Which for me that doesn't happen. I sweat, man.
Yeah.
But as I started realizing this, all of a sudden I started feeling really bad. And to the point where it was a really slow walk for another 4 miles back into that water source. When I finally got that out, I finished out my run just walking.
Yeah.
And then it took me 2 months to recover from that. I just wasn't right for 2 months. And that was my first experience with a severe dehydration. I got pretty sick from that. And, that was, I was trying to think, that was probably somewhere around 2007 that happened. Mm-hmm. And so it clicked in my head that there's something, hydration is important. That was kind of the first experience with that. And then, years later, as I'm going through, I'm learning about the different supplements that would help me in those endurance sports.
Yep.
But when I started jiu-jitsu, that all changed in a big way. We had time off for the COVID, where the gym was closed there for a while. I realized during that time that this sport that I love so much could just be taken at any time, and I realized how fragile that was. And so when we came back, man, that's when I started training hard.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, my goal was to get my black belt by the time I turned 50. I'm 47 this year, and I should have it sometime this year is kind of what I'm hoping for here.
Yeah.
So I kind of sped that up by just spending, like I told you, 350, 400 classes a year. Been doing that for 5 years now.
Wow.
And that level of training sometimes requires 2 days. A couple days a week I do mornings and evenings.
Yep.
Well, I would weigh myself before a morning class. I'd go in for a 2-hour session. I'd come home somewhere between 7 and 9 pounds lighter than when I started. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
You wrap yourself in those fight pajamas, and that's like, that's Sweat City.
Yeah.
Well, I do that in the morning, go home, drink all the water I could, come back at night, do it again. And so, there's just no way you're recovering. There's no rehydrating in the 6 or 7 hours between classes, right?
Yeah.
That's not happening. And so I started to notice one day that, man, not only was I not recovering, but I was starting to get like this. I wondered if there was something wrong with me, because I was getting this foggy head, like my thoughts weren't right. I was just completely exhausted to a level I'd never felt before. And it was starting to get to where my decision making just was screwy.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm in there trying to balance a checkbook or transfer money between business accounts, and I have to do it 3 or 4 times because I just can't do math.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the peak of it, where I'm like, man, something's going on here. And as I started to research that, I started to figure out it was very likely an electrolyte deficiency. And so I started to look around for what products were available. Found some pretty decent ones. But in the research that I was doing, all those products had stuff missing, I felt. So I'd be using these electrolytes and they helped tremendously. But like I said, there was always just something missing, or maybe they had sugar in them, or they had artificial colors, or those kind of things, and couldn't find that exact thing that I wanted. So I started to build it in my kitchen, you know, and sitting there mixing up white powders, and so my wife and kids called it my meth lab for the longest time because I just thought that was funny. I think you got the card that I send out, right? That says, you know, congratulations, you've ordered white powder from a perfect stranger.
Yes, that was cool. That was cool.
Yeah, we kind of put that in there just based off that, right? We thought it was kind of funny. And but anyways, I started making the stuff. I would use the good old Kool-Aid drink to mix into as flavoring, and I'd take it back to the gym and I'd give it to some of the guys. Well, they really liked what they were feeling. You know, immediately they had results, and we're going, crap, dude. It tastes horrible, but you should do something with this.
Yeah.
And so I started to develop it, you know, and that was where I started to really refine the formula. And, you know, I built a spreadsheet, took samples down to the guys. They'd all try it and tell me what their thoughts were. And I'd come home and adjust it, take it back down to the gym. And I had 30 or 40 guys down there that were helping me develop this thing.
Yeah.
Before long, we had something we thought tasted pretty good. And you know, the electrolyte formula behind it was solid, and we're having great results. And so then I started getting involved with some other sports, some guys racing Baja trucks and some ultra runners, and, you know, letting all these guys test it to see. One of the big things in the endurance sport can be, if you have too much magnesium, can act as a laxative, and no one wants that when they're trying to you know what I'm talking about, don't you?
I would take Imodium before a race. That was my secret weapon. So I would carb up 2 days before, and then I would take Imodium the day of, because I am a germaphobe. I do not want to go in a porta-john. I'm not kidding. No, I would make sure I could hold it all day long. Yeah. So
you're getting it out beforehand, huh?
100%. So, but no, I would not take anything that was a diuretic before like the day before the race. No way.
Okay.
So Imodium will help you not go.
Oh, it's the opposite.
It's the opposite. Yeah, I would take Imodium. So
beforehand try to clear yourself out. But
so I wouldn't have
to stop yourself up,
dude. There's something about my body. Okay, this is what drives me crazy about me. When I get excited about something, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write this, and then we're gonna make a video, and we're gonna do this. And as soon as I sit down, I gotta go to the bathroom. That's my life. Yeah. Like most of my brainstorms like leave if I don't write them down, because I got to go to the bathroom. Like I don't know, maybe I get excited. I don't know, but I had to not go.
Before every podcast, you have to deal with that, huh?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I go through phases. Like I go through this, like I get nervous doing this. I really do. And, you know, I go through phases like the why am I doing this phase? I'm really excited about this phase. And then I got to go to the bathroom.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're not alone in that, man. You're not alone in not wanting to go sit in those porta johns, because those ones are
so bad.
They just get bad because it's a bunch of sweaty people who, we don't need to talk about that anymore. But it's a mess.
Well, also think about it this way. Like what most people don't understand, like, it's different for triathlon because I'd wear a top and a bottom. But when you're in a bike race, you're wearing that Farmer John under thing, you know, and then the jersey over. And if you got to go in a porta-john, you basically got to completely
strip down, right?
You got to strip down. You can't.
It's like a wrestling singlet, kind of.
It is. Yeah. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, my brain goes right to that.
No, I hear you. And so that was a big deal for me, right? So back to the reason we started giving it to some ultra runners, because I needed to see what was it going to be like for that. Like I couldn't have my original formula just had too much magnesium in it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'd go out on a run and get 4, 5, 6 miles in, and I'm like, okay, no, this is too much.
Yeah.
So I had to back that off and kind of hit that balance to where it would give me the magnesium I needed, but not be overpowering and cause other problems.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the other thing we designed in to the product was we needed to be real clean feeling in your mouth, right? You know how that goes. Like I would take those gels.
Oh yeah.
And you're trying to breathe with this thick film in your mouth, and it was horrible.
Yep.
And so, I made it like this huge priority that whatever we build has to be clean feeling. Couldn't make you salivate, and it couldn't make you, it couldn't leave a film. And a lot of electrolyte drinks do. They just leave this funk in your mouth.
Yep.
And then you taste it forever when you're breathing hard, right?
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, again, I'm a jiu-jitsu guy who's designing an electrolyte with that in mind, though, because I have that background.
Yeah.
And, I think we achieved all those things. So
how, okay. So you create this balance, right? With all the different ingredients. How do you control each packet? How do you know you're getting the right balance in each packet?
So there's a process that these machines that mix this stuff up use to make sure it's consistent.
Okay.
I'm going to pretend to know the intricacies of it because I only know a little bit about how that works.
Yeah.
But basically, whenever we're ordering these powder substances and they get sent to this manufacturer, we're real particular on the particle size.
Okay.
Because there is this crazy phenomenon. They call it gold panning in the mixing world. And this is kind of fascinating for you to learn. But if you have either heavy or large and small mixed particle sizes, let's say we made a tub, like say a 50 or 60 serving tub. If these particles were different weights, and they are, because you have magnesium, which is super light, and you have potassium, which is also not that heavy, but you have calcium, which is a little heavier, sodium chloride, which is, they're all different weights and all different particle sizes. You have this tub, and then you ship it, and the thing shakes. It just sits there and shakes during shipping. Well, it gold pans. And so the small, heavy ones go to the bottom, and so you can mix these things up perfectly, stick them in a container like that, ship them off, and they show up in layers.
Whoa, I didn't think about that. Wow. Okay.
That's totally fascinating. So what these machines do when they mix them is they'll grind all that stuff down to the same particle size. And so they eliminate that. And then they mix it up with these augers, and there's several stages to it. They use compressed air in certain situations so that it actually blows the stuff around and gets a complete mixture. Mm-hmm. And then they fill the packets. So as long as you use the whole packet, there's no chance at all of that oil panning. Listen, what industry I'm in, right? Gold panning that happens. So you use this packet, they're consistent across the board.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's complicated, man. And I learned that firsthand when I was mixing it in my dining room. There was a whole bunch of stuff, and I learned how static electricity affects it. I learned how this gold panning thing works because I'd get these really inconsistent batches and couldn't figure out why.
No kidding.
All that. Yeah. So, I hire a professional company that mixes stuff that's what they do. They're a contract manufacturer. And so I don't have to have the $1 million piece of equipment that mixes that stuff.
Yeah. And what about, storage, shipping, do you do that yourself, or is that something that you outsource as well?
Yeah, for now, as we're getting started, we have a facility that we keep the stuff in, and we ship it out our very selves. So,
oh wow, okay.
My daughter's in charge of that, and my wife does our social media. I do the outside sales and the kind of run the financial end of the business, and then my daughter, like I said, she does the shipping and receiving. So
yeah,
so that's all done real local. We're just we're 3.5, almost 4 months in as we're talking here.
Yeah.
From us launching the company, we're 3 years from when we started development.
Wow.
But we've only been selling now for 3.5 months.
Yeah. How long ago did you start triathlon?
2015.
Okay. So, okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty good chunk. So I started riding bicycles around, oh shoot, man. 20 years ago, 25, can't remember, but it was, gosh, man, I can't remember when I bought my first bike, but it's been a while. So I was just a roadie, I didn't really do any mountain biking or anything. I was just a roadie. And, I was a swimmer in high school. And so I got into triathlon, and it was, at the time I was going through like a lot of like personal stuff, like, a bad relationship, divorce, stuff like that. And it was like my coping mechanism. So I could ride.
Sure.
My superpower is I can do mundane tasks for a long time. So when I was in the military and they would say, you got to, your punishment is you got to polish this for 4 hours. I'm like, no problem, dude. Cause I can just go. So if you put me on a bike and say pedal that way for hours, I can do it. And
wow.
Yeah,
that's a superpower right there, man.
It is.
I'm exactly the opposite of that.
I did 4 hours on a treadmill just to see if I could do it. Yeah.
That makes me want to cringe. Yeah.
I just wanted to see if I could do it. Yeah.
One of our ultra runners sent me a map, like a Strava.
Oh,
it
yeah.
showed his race.
Yeah.
He did 52 miles on a high school running track.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Just process that for a second, man.
That's
I don't know what's that. 208 laps. I think he said.
That's a lot. Yeah.
And it's just this red line going around and around and around this track. And I'm like,
yeah,
dude, every stone that was sitting on the track, every little piece of paper that was sitting out there that somebody dropped. And
yeah, I'll start doing math. I'll be like, okay, so 10 steps got me here. And then so 20 steps, 30. And so it should take me about 65 and a half steps to get around. I'll start doing that kind of stuff in my brain.
Oh my God.
So yeah.
I'd start another business. That's how that would work.
Yeah. So I once, a few times, when the weather was bad, I would go into a spin class room and I would just sit there and pedal for hours. And then like a class would start and finish, and then another class would come in, start and finish. And I just sit there and pedal at my own pace, and there'd be screaming and do this and do that. Nope. I would just put my head, and I'm just a puddle of sweat under me. But
sure.
I just loved it. I absolutely loved it.
I remember those days swimming was that way.
Yeah.
I'd go do laps in the pool, and I'd be doing 250 laps in the pool. And,
no problem.
You see people come and go. You're there for hours doing it. And that was
the worst day in the pool. I was at the it was a YMCA where they had like the play pool and the lap pool were all the same pool. It was just divided by a small wall, and there was only like 3 lap lanes. So you got the play area and then a wall and then lap. So and the play area was open to the lap area, so it was like an opening. So I'm doing laps, and as I'm swimming, I'm kind of taking a breath, and I see the lifeguard coming, and I'm like, oh, that's weird. And I'm just swimming, and he's getting closer. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And he's walking, and finally I look up and I grab the edge of the pool, and I'm like, what's up? And he says, hey, I got to get you out of the pool. I'm like, why? He goes, a kid pooped. And me being a germaphobe, I appeared next to him. I think I jumped out of that pool. I was like, no problem.
Hard enough to stand right up. Huh?
Yeah. I just appeared next to him. Like, okay, I'm done swimming. But did you ever do any full distance triathlons?
I never did. No, Olympic distance was the farthest I did.
Okay. Yeah. I did Olympics. I never did a race I was ready for. So I always signed up for a race that I wasn't ready for so I could get ready, so that kind of motivated me. So I remember I got this crazy idea. I want to do Ironman, right?
Oh, sure.
So I go to the website and I'm like trying to find one, and sold out. I knew nothing about Ironman, right? So sold out. I'm like, who the hell wants to go to, North Texas anyway. So I kind of gave up on the idea, and a friend of mine told me about challenge races, which were like, they're not Ironman logoed, but they're the same distance. So I'm like, oh, really? Cool. So I found one called Silverman out of Henderson. I don't think they have it anymore.
Okay.
But I go on the website. I'm like, oh, it's not sold out. I signed up right away. And I was like, well, I'm going to hire a coach, to kind of write the program for me. And I hired this guy, local guy. Ron, I can't remember Ron's last name. But anyway, I had a lot of expletives that describe Ron because of the workouts he sent me. So I told him, he's like, oh, what race are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm doing Silverman. And he gave me a look like, he goes, you've only got 5 months. I'm like, yeah, 5 months. That's like an eternity. He's like, no. He goes, you need to look at, the race course.
Well, I was going to ask you what the elevation was like, because
so Henderson in Nevada is just that hill that you go over going into Las Vegas, right?
Sure.
I never knew Henderson was that hilly.
3,000 feet, something like that.
Yeah, about 3,000. But if you do if you do the entire course, it's almost 12,000 feet of climbing.
Oh, that's real. Okay.
That's awful.
Yeah, that's horrifying.
And it was basically 2 out and backs, right, through these parks.
Yeah.
And there's nothing around. If you get
in that distance, it's 112 miles on the bike, right?
112 on the bike. Yeah. So there was one part of the course where you kind of crest a hill and then you go downhill, and then you're like, oh, thank goodness, because you come out of the saddle and you get the breeze going, and then you keep going and going and going, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is like a never ending thing. And then I see a truck. Sure. I see a bunch of cones and I see a truck. I'm like, oh, cool, right? It was the halfway point, and I got to turn around and go right back up that hill.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So
somebody had bad intentions when they designed that course.
there was one pro, and I think, this is a long time ago. This is 2010. So there was one pro on the course, and that pro did not break 10 hours. So
really?
for people who don't know triathlon, if you do the Arizona triathlon, there's people breaking 9 hours, like easy. I mean, I hate to say easy, but there's a lot of people breaking 9 hours. And sure. That's motoring, right? Because it's not flat, but it's not Henderson. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you look at the DNF, the did not finish list, is like gigantic on that course, man. People are just like half. I memean, but Ron, thanks to him, we had a great, we got pretty scientific with it, but it's funny because your product, I'm trying to your product would have been a godsend at that point, because gone are the days of what was it? Gatorade, salt pills, and jelly sandwiches. You know what I mean? Those are gone, man. Those don't exist anymore. But that's basically what I lived on the bike, and the goo, obviously, right? But yeah, so Ron said, we're not going to get your heart rate over 160 going uphill. We're not. And he says, I don't care what happens. You stay on the saddle and then you gear down until you get below 160 on your heart rate. And thanks to that, I didn't stop one time on the bike, and I ran the entire run course. There were people that were coming out of the saddle and just getting it up those hills, and they were zombies on the run course. They couldn't.
Oh yeah. Bonk hard. I did one here locally, and it was a pretty flat as far as triathlon courses go. There's a few hills in it, but nothing tremendous. But I did the same thing on the bike, where I was real conscious of my heart rate.
Yeah.
But being so conscious of that, I forgot that was a good time to take some nutrition in.
Yes. I had a timer.
It up, man.
I had an alarm. Yeah.
Oh, I wish I would have thought it through to that extent, but I got to my run and I realized I left even my bottle had some actual carbs in it and some nutrition that I could have used, but I hop off the bike and take off running. I grab my water bottle, left that nutrient drink on the bike.
Oh.
Didn't even think about it until I was about a mile into the 6-mile run. And then all of a sudden, man, I bumped so hard.
It sucks.
To where I was stopping by the aid stations, just begging them for some Gatorade, because that was all that was there. Right. I needed some form of calories, man.
Yeah.
And it ended up the run. I totally bunked on the run. It was miserable.
Yeah. I even went so far as a couple of months before the race, I emailed the directors or whomever was running it, and I asked what kind of drinks are you going to have on the course? And because I was drinking Gatorade, and they were going to have the Armor drinks. It's not Under Armour, but it's something. It's like a something Armor drink.
Yeah, you got it. I know what you're talking about, though.
And it's like you said, it leaves that film. It's like that. It's gross.
Yeah.
But I started drinking that because that's all I was going to have on the course. And if push came to shove, I was going to have to drink their stuff, right? So I had a bottle. I had 2 bottles actually, and they were I don't know. It's almost 1,000 calories of stuff in this bottle, like sludge, right? But that was my nutrition. And then I had my, obviously my water, and then I had a sweet drink. So it's something more of a, what do they call it? Like a motivational type of thing to help me get through it. Something that I liked. And
that tastes good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, But then every 30 minutes I would pop a salt pill. And
Yeah.
if I had your drink in the bottle of the stuff that I liked, I could have killed two birds with one stone. It would have been perfect.
Yeah.
But that didn't exist.
Yeah.
back
So
then.
just as a hint,
Yes.
there's some upcoming stuff that we've got in development
Oh, really?
that has some calories in it. That's more than just the electrolyte.
Oh, I love it. I love it, man.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So I'll keep you posted on how that comes along, but
Absolutely.
I'm
Absolutely.
working on it now.
I love it. Yeah. So last thing I'll tell you about that race, because it was so awful. The hardest two hills were after mile 90. So
Keep talking.
Yeah. So you're the sweep where they sweep you off the course was about just around that point. And
Sure.
and then so you basically ride, you come off the main road into a trail. It was like just imagine where you it was like a small road where you could fit two quads, right? Almost like a golf cart trail. So most of the climbing was like 6%, 6% grade because of the regular roads. I don't know what this was, but people were like walking their bikes up these hills. They were so steep that, I mean, I tell people, like, you could read everything on your wheel, like everything, all the PSI, because you're only moving as fast as your pedals move. That's all your wheels are moving. And I was pretty stubborn on that one. I stayed on the bike. I should have walked it up, but there were people walking their bikes up those hills after mile 90, dude.
Yeah, that's
brutal.
That's got that race. That course designer had some sick tendencies right there.
He was awful. Yeah. So I think they only do a half now. I think it's in October or something like that. But this was an October race, and I'll tell you what, man, it was the hardest race. I mean,
that's still got to be just super hot down there too. But in October,
it's warm. Yeah, it's warm. And normally, like, you're looking at 6 hours, for 100 miles. 112 took me 7.5 hours to finish because I was just going uphill all the time.
Yeah, that's for real. That's for real.
Yeah. So I mean, a product like yours would have been a godsend, man. It really would have. But I
love the feedback I'm getting from the ultra runners. Those guys they're just stoked about it. It makes me so happy to get when somebody calls me up and says, "Hey, dude, I just want you to know what this did for me." I can't tell you how that feels, man.
Yeah.
It's such a thrill.
Well, especially since you've been there, right? You've hit that wall and you know that feeling. It's awful, especially when you're like, you're not going to quit, but gosh, you really'd like to.
No, you do. If someone's experienced that bonk or that, like I did on the long run where I stopped sweating, man, it messes you up for a long time. It's not like you just get over it in 10 minutes after you eat something.
No.
You're going to deal with that for months afterwards.
Especially when you start getting up there in age, you're in the mid 30s, 40s, something like that. It's going to take a lot longer to recover, man. Yeah, man.
So you asked when I got involved with triathlon, that was 2015. Just as a side note, running started around 2006. So I had a lot of years of just the distance running, before. Yeah. And most of it was just hobby stuff, and I've never been competitive. They stick me in what they call the Clydesdale class.
The big boys. Yeah, man.
200 pounders,
Yeah.
The smallest I've ever been is 190 when I've been involved in that. So.
Wow. Yeah.
Larger fella.
I did my last triathlon at 167 pounds, and I did my first day of jiu-jitsu at 238.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And what are you now? You're pretty trim now.
But I walk around about 185 right now. I get down to 175 for competitions because I do the middleweight. So yeah, but yeah, man, getting fat's a lot of fun, man. Food is awesome. You're saying it's a lot of fun, but it sure sucks. It sucks. Yeah, it does.
I've been as heavy as 240, and I know that my wake up call for me is I was out playing with this friend of mine's kid. We were playing Frisbee, and he threw this Frisbee, and it went over my head, and it landed on top of this little knoll. It looked like a mountain. When I had to look up all 8 feet, I had to walk up the side of that mountain. But I remember walking up that thing and being out of breath and thinking, at the time I was 33 years old, 32 years old. And I'm like, this is pathetic.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was pathetic. And so that's what kicked off my running was,
Yeah.
back then I couldn't walk up that stinking hill to get a Frisbee.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it was walking up a flight of stairs. I had to stop halfway up. And I'm like, I was an athlete not too long ago. This would have been no problem. So I had to do something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
well, we share that, man. That's it feels way better to be in shape.
It's way better.
Everything's better.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I think there's I can't remember who it is, but there's one of the high level, Nogi guys. He's like, life is just better when you're jacked. And I'm like, yeah, I like that.
Only days when I get jacked and find out, but
yeah, right. Oh my gosh. Yeah, man. But, well, listen, man, I know you got family, coming in, you're up against it. And, I'd like to hear more about the products coming up after you release them. Maybe we could, sit down and have a conversation about those. But I'm excited. I'm excited to be, involved with your company. I'd love to, carry your stuff in our academy. Anything to help, a fellow jiu-jitsu player, a practitioner.
It's my favorite perk of the job is I get to meet all these cool jiu-jitsu guys around the country. Man, it's so rad.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm getting the chance to go meet Jean-Jacques Machado here in about a month.
Very cool, man.
So I've never met him, but he's just one of my heroes, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
That dude's a magician. So
yeah, that's
I'm
so
super
cool.
excited.
Well, I'd love to hear all about that as well. Let everybody know.
I do know next February I'll be back down in your neck of the woods for sure. So if I don't get there between now and then, I'll come see you then. So.
Love it. Let everybody know where they can find you on social media and all that, website and all that stuff.
Yeah, we are SALT Electrolytes on everything, and that's salt spelled just like table salt.
Yeah.
So SALT Electrolytes. YouTube, Instagram's where we're the most present. I do some quirky little jiu-jitsu videos on there. I'm not sure if you paid attention to any of that.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah.
It's I just put it up there. It's funny because it's almost it seems a little unrelated to just the electrolyte, but that's where I come from, and I love to share that stuff. So the Instagram's where we're at, but Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, it's all SALT Electrolytes, man.
Awesome.
So that's where I can be found.
Perfect. All right, everybody, if you love the podcast or even if you hate the podcast, please leave us a review, like and subscribe on all the social media platforms, and follow us on YouTube. We've hit over 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you guys so much. Let's hit 10,000 this year. And Riley, thank you for being on the show, brother.
Man, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me, Alex.
Awesome. This episode of the BJJ Foxcast is brought to you by BioPro. BioPro is an all-natural alternative to prescription human growth hormone, which aids in recovery, anti-aging, metabolism, libido, immunity, skin health, cognition, sleep, and stress. Just one vial per day provides a substantial boost to all of these growth factors. Okay, so that's what they want me to say. Here's what I know as an aging grappler. I've been using BioPro Plus and the nighttime variant BioPro Plus Cortisleep for several months, and it feels like I've grown a third lung. My gas tank is noticeably bigger. My recovery is faster, and I'm back on the mats much quicker, not just between training sessions, but between rounds. Now you can get $30 off your first order of BioPro when you use the code Foxcast at www.bioproteintech.com. That's code Foxcast for $30 off your first order at www.bioproteintech.com. Thank you, BioPro.